The bank was busy that morning with a steady stream of people coming in and out, all focused on their own lives. The sound of chatter, the faint hum of computers, and the occasional ringing of the doorbell filled the air. Behind one of the counters stood a young teller, slightly impatient and not very friendly. He had been working there for a couple of years and had seen countless customers, but lately, he had developed a habit of being dismissive to anyone who didn't fit the image he thought was the typical successful client. That morning, a woman walked in. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, moving with grace and calm. She was dressed in professional, stylish clothes, her handbag neatly held under her arm. She approached the counter where the teller was stationed and waited patiently for her turn, offering a polite smile. Her demeanor was composed and her eyes reflected intelligence and calm determination. The teller, however, hardly noticed her smile. He looked at her with a fleeting glance and immediately assumed she was just another customer, who might be difficult to deal with. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone not very welcoming. "Yes," she replied calmly. "I would like to deposit this check and also inquire about some account services." The teller barely glanced at the check, and instead of asking polite questions or verifying details with a professional approach, he raised an eyebrow and said, "Are you sure your account can handle this? Sometimes people don't understand their limits." The woman blinked, momentarily surprised by his rudeness, but she did not lose her composure. She repeated her request clearly, emphasizing her professionalism. "I want to deposit this check and I would like to speak about my account options. Could you assist me, please?" The teller leaned back slightly, crossing his arms, his impatience showing. He muttered under his breath, "Some people really think they belong here." Other customers in line noticed the tension. Whispers passed quietly as people watched the interaction unfold. The woman remained composed, though inside she felt a mixture of irritation and disbelief at the teller's unprofessional attitude. She had been to this bank many times, handling large transactions and maintaining several accounts, but today, the teller seemed to judge her instantly, basing his attitude on her appearance and perhaps her race. "Look, I don't have time for complicated accounts right now. You just want to deposit this, right?" the teller said, his voice sharp. "Yes, I want to deposit this, but I also want to understand the services my account offers. I believe I should have full information about my accounts," she replied firmly but politely. The teller's expression hardened. He seemed to take offense at her calm assertiveness. He reached for the check but then hesitated, tapping his fingers on the counter. "I don't see why you need so much information. Most people just want to deposit their money and leave. Are you sure you understand what you're doing?" Her patience was tested, but she did not show any anger. Instead, she leaned slightly forward and said, "I have been managing my accounts for years and I understand them very well. I am simply asking for the same service any client should receive." The teller scoffed, a small smirk on his face as if he had made a private judgment. He leaned closer and in a moment of unacceptable behavior, hit the woman lightly on her arm. It was not a heavy strike, but it was enough to shock her and the people around them. Gasps filled the air. A couple of customers stepped back, unsure if they should intervene, while others stared in disbelief. The woman froze for a moment, feeling the sting of both the physical contact and the humiliation. Her eyes met the teller's and she saw no regret, only arrogance and a strange sense of superiority in his gaze. Her hands rested calmly on the counter as she collected herself, refusing to retaliate but letting the weight of the moment settle. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady, though sharper now. "That was completely inappropriate. I expect to be treated with respect." The teller's smirk faltered slightly, but he quickly tried to regain his composure. I was just making a point. You don't need to overreact," he said, nervously tapping the counter. "I will not overreact to being assaulted," she replied firmly. "This is a bank. Your job is to assist customers, not to judge or harm them." The tension in the bank grew as the manager, who had been sitting in the office monitoring the floor, quickly stepped out. He had been alerted by a security camera or perhaps by the commotion itself. He approached the counter, a concerned expression on his face. "What's going on here?" he asked. The teller tried to explain, stammering. "She was being difficult and I was just—" "You were what?" the manager interrupted, seeing the woman's steady gaze and noticing the slight redness on her arm. "You hit her? Is that correct?" The teller's face turned pale. It was just a tap. She shouldn't have been so demanding." The manager's expression hardened. "Regardless of anything, hitting a customer is unacceptable. I need to speak to both of you in my office immediately." The woman nodded, maintaining her calm but clearly feeling the weight of the situation. As she followed the manager, she noticed the curious stares of the other customers. Some whispered to each other, clearly shocked that such behavior could happen in a place like a bank. In the manager's office, the woman took a seat, placing her bag neatly beside her. She felt a mix of emotions, anger, disbelief, but also determination. She knew she had the right to be treated with dignity, and she intended to make sure that the incident would be addressed properly. The teller stood across from her, shifting uncomfortably, clearly regretting his impulsive action but still unsure of the consequences. The manager began asking questions, carefully listening to the woman's account of what had happened. She described the situation calmly, recounting the teller's rude remarks, dismissive attitude, and ultimately the physical contact. She emphasized that she had only asked for normal account services and had acted politely throughout. The manager took notes, clearly understanding the gravity of the incident. Meanwhile, the teller tried to explain himself, but his words sounded defensive and weak. The manager interrupted him several times, making it clear that hitting a customer was beyond any acceptable explanation. "We have to take this seriously," the manager said. "This could affect not only you but the reputation of the bank." The woman listened quietly, understanding that the situation was bigger than just a personal insult. She knew that many people might not realize how such behavior could harm someone's dignity, and she felt a responsibility to ensure that it was addressed correctly. She also sensed that the teller had acted out of prejudice, which added another layer to the issue. After the initial discussion, the manager asked the woman if she would like to file a formal complaint. She agreed, and the paperwork was prepared. She filled out the necessary details, maintaining her calm and professional demeanor. The manager assured her that an internal investigation would begin immediately, and appropriate action would be taken. The woman nodded, satisfied that the bank was taking steps to address the situation. As she left the office, she could hear the whispers and curious glances of customers and staff. She held her head high, showing no sign of fear or intimidation. Inside, however, she reflected on how surprising it was that someone could act with such ignorance and prejudice, especially in a place that should serve people equally. The teller was left standing in the office, a sinking feeling in his stomach. He realized that he had made a grave mistake and that the consequences could be severe. He also began to feel a flicker of awareness about how his assumptions and biases had led him to act in a way that was completely unprofessional and harmful. Outside, the woman returned to her day, calmly handling her phone calls and business matters as if nothing had happened. She knew that this incident would not define her, but it would serve as a reminder to others about the importance of respect and professionalism. She had faced prejudice head-on and maintained her dignity, leaving a quiet yet powerful impression on everyone who had witnessed the event. The incident would soon become the talk of the bank, sparking conversations among staff and customers alike. People began to question how such behavior could happen and what measures should be put in place to prevent it. The story of the day's events would linger in the minds of many, a testament to both the ignorance of some and the resilience of those who face it. By the end of the morning, the bank began to take its first steps toward addressing the issue, reviewing policies and preparing for the necessary conversations with staff. The woman, meanwhile, continued with her day, confident in herself and aware of the impact her composed response had on everyone around her. She had turned a moment of hostility into an example of strength and dignity, showing that even in the face of prejudice, calm confidence and professionalism could make a powerful statement. After the incident at the bank, the woman left the branch, but her mind remained focused on what had happened. She knew that she had handled the immediate situation with dignity, but she also understood that addressing the deeper problem required more attention. She decided to call the bank's head office later that day to ensure her complaint was formally recorded and taken seriously. As she walked through the streets, she observed the normal flow of life around her, yet the memory of the teller's behavior lingered. It was not just a matter of anger, it was a matter of principle and respect. Inside the bank, the atmosphere was tense. The teller sat in the manager's office, fidgeting and avoiding eye contact. The manager was serious and firm, explaining that such actions were unacceptable and that the incident would be escalated. The teller could feel the weight of his mistake pressing down on him. He began to realize that the consequences could be far-reaching. It wasn't just about a customer complaint anymore. It was about the reputation of the bank and the possibility of legal action. Other staff members had gathered quietly, curious about what had happened. Some whispered to one another, trying to piece together the story, while others shook their heads, disappointed in the teller's behavior. The bank was a place where professionalism was expected, and yet here was an example of complete disregard for basic respect and human dignity. Meanwhile, the woman was reflecting on her own life and work. She had been managing multiple businesses for years, building her reputation through hard work and dedication. She had never expected that a day running errands would bring her face to face with such blatant disrespect. Yet she remained calm and focused. She understood that reacting with anger or retaliation would not achieve anything. Instead, she chose to maintain her composure and to let her actions speak louder than words. Later that afternoon, the bank manager began reviewing her accounts. As he pulled up the records, he and other senior staff discovered the truth. She was the bank's biggest client, with multiple accounts, significant deposits, and ongoing business dealings. The realization hit the teller like a thunderbolt. The woman he had struck and treated rudely was not just any customer. She was someone who had contributed greatly to the bank's success. His assumptions, based on prejudice, had caused him to act foolishly against someone of immense importance. The manager called a meeting with the teller, explaining the seriousness of the situation. The woman's accounts were not only substantial, but she also had a strong reputation in the local business community. The incident could easily become public, damaging the bank's credibility and the teller's career. The teller felt a deep sense of regret and panic. He began to understand how dangerous his ignorance and bias had been. This was a moment of reckoning for him. The woman, aware that the bank had begun its internal investigation, decided to document everything she could remember about the incident. She wrote down every detail, the teller's words, his actions, and the reactions of nearby staff and customers. She wanted to ensure that there was a clear and accurate account of what had happened. This was not just for herself. It was to help the bank address the issue and prevent similar incidents in the future. As the investigation continued, she received a call from the manager. He expressed sincere regret on behalf of the bank and assured her that the teller would face consequences. He explained that the bank would review its policies, provide sensitivity training, and take measures to ensure that all clients were treated with respect, regardless of their appearance or background. She appreciated the manager's effort but remained cautious, knowing that words alone were not enough. The woman also began to think about the larger implications of the incident. She realized that many people experience subtle or overt prejudice in daily life, and that incidents like this were not isolated. She reflected on how important it was to maintain dignity in the face of discrimination, and to use one's position to advocate for fairness and respect. In her own way, she was determined to turn a negative experience into a learning opportunity, both for herself and for others. Meanwhile, the teller began to feel the consequences of his actions more personally. He could sense the disappointment from his colleagues, the seriousness of the manager's response, and the potential loss of trust from the bank. He began to research ways to address his behavior, trying to understand why he had acted as he did. He realized that his biases had led him to make assumptions without knowing the facts, and that those assumptions had caused real harm. This was a difficult moment of self-reflection for him. The bank started preparing for the possibility of media attention. Given the woman's prominence in the business community, there was a chance that the incident could become known publicly. The executives knew that handling the situation with transparency and care was crucial. They began drafting statements and planning for a formal apology, ensuring that it would convey respect and responsibility without exaggeration or defensiveness. As the day progressed, the woman continued with her regular activities. She attended meetings, handled business calls, and maintained her usual schedule. Despite the tension from the morning's events, she showed resilience and poise. Her calm and professional behavior left a strong impression on everyone around her. She demonstrated that even in challenging situations, it was possible to maintain control, dignity, and a sense of purpose. By evening, the bank had taken several steps to address the situation internally. The teller was suspended pending further review, and mandatory training on customer relations and sensitivity was scheduled for all staff. The manager personally reviewed the incident with employees, emphasizing the importance of professionalism and respect. Staff members reflected on their own behavior, recognizing the need for vigilance against prejudice and the importance of treating every client with dignity. The woman received a call from the manager again, who informed her that a full review of her accounts and transactions had been conducted to ensure everything was in order. He thanked her for her patience and understanding, acknowledging the distress caused by the incident. She appreciated the gesture, but she also knew that the real measure of change would be in the bank's actions and policies going forward. As she prepared to end her day, the woman thought about the lessons learned. She recognized the importance of speaking up, documenting incidents, and holding institutions accountable. She also understood the value of calm resilience and the power of maintaining dignity in difficult moments. Her experience was a reminder that prejudice could appear in unexpected places, but how one responded could define the outcome. The teller, on the other hand, spent the evening reflecting on his actions and the consequences. He realized that a single moment of poor judgment and bias had the potential to derail a career and harm others. It was a sobering realization, one that forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself and the way he perceived others. He began to understand that respect and professionalism were not optional, but essential components of working with people. By the end of the day, the woman felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had faced an unexpected challenge, maintained her composure, and taken steps to ensure accountability. She knew that the situation was not over, but she also knew that her response had set a powerful example. Her actions demonstrated that dignity, patience, and clear communication could turn a difficult experience into an opportunity for awareness and change. The bank, meanwhile, began to implement measures to prevent similar incidents. Policies were reviewed, training programs were enhanced, and staff were reminded of the importance of empathy and professionalism. The incident sparked conversations among employees about unconscious bias and the responsibility they had toward every client. Slowly, the culture of the branch began to shift, influenced by the events of that morning. In the community, whispers about the incident began to circulate. Some people were shocked that such behavior could occur in a professional setting, while others admired the woman's calm and effective handling of the situation. It became a subtle reminder to everyone that respect and dignity should be upheld in every interaction, regardless of assumptions or appearances. For the woman, the experience reinforced her sense of self and the importance of staying true to her values. She had faced prejudice directly and had responded in a way that reflected her integrity. She knew that the actions she took not only protected her own dignity, but also sent a message about the importance of fairness and professionalism. The teller, now facing the reality of the consequences, began to consider the changes he needed to make in his behavior and mindset. He recognized that this moment could be a turning point for him, an opportunity to confront his biases and learn from his mistakes. Whether he chose to grow from this experience or not would determine the rest of his career and the trust of the people he served. As the night fell, the woman reflected on the day and the unexpected challenges it had brought. She felt a sense of resolve and purpose. The incident had been an obstacle, but it had also provided clarity about the values she held dear and the way she wanted to influence the world around her. She went to bed that night knowing that she had acted with strength, dignity, and wisdom, and that those qualities would continue to guide her in all areas of her life. The next morning, the woman returned to the bank not for her own transactions but to follow up on the events of the previous day. She wanted to ensure that the matter was being handled properly and that the necessary steps were taken to prevent any similar incidents from happening in the future. As she entered, the staff greeted her politely, noticeably more attentive than usual. Some still looked nervous, clearly aware of the previous day's events and their implications. The manager approached her immediately, offering a sincere greeting. He had spent the evening reviewing her accounts, understanding her importance to the bank, and planning the next steps for addressing the incident. "We want to make sure that we correct the situation," he said, guiding her to a private office. "We have looked at your accounts and transactions, and it is clear that you are one of our most valued clients. I want to apologize again for what happened yesterday." The woman nodded, appreciating the gesture but keeping her focus on the bigger picture. She understood that apologies were only meaningful when accompanied by real action. "I am glad to see that you are taking this seriously," she replied. "It is important not only for me but for all your clients that respect is maintained at all times." The manager then explained that the teller had been suspended and that the bank was conducting a full internal review. They had begun discussing measures to ensure that all staff were trained to handle clients with respect, regardless of appearance or background. He mentioned that policies would be revised to strengthen accountability and emphasize professionalism. The woman listened carefully, her expression calm but resolute. She realized that the situation could serve as a turning point, not just for her but for the bank as a whole. As the meeting continued, the teller was brought in under supervision. His demeanor was noticeably different from the day before. There was visible tension, and he avoided eye contact, clearly understanding the gravity of the situation. The manager introduced them formally, explaining the importance of acknowledging mistakes and learning from them. The woman spoke directly to the teller, her voice steady. "Yesterday was not just a personal incident. It reflects on the way assumptions and biases can harm others. I hope you will take this as an opportunity to understand the impact of your actions and work to prevent such behavior in the future." She maintained a tone of firmness without anger, highlighting the lesson rather than simply expressing blame. The teller, overwhelmed by the reality of the situation, nodded silently. He had never fully understood how his prejudices influenced his actions until now. Seeing the calm and composed manner of the woman he had mistreated made him realize the depth of his mistake. He struggled to find words, knowing that anything he said might sound hollow. But he understood that his future actions would speak louder than any apology. The manager guided the conversation towards solutions. He explained the new measures the bank planned to implement: mandatory sensitivity and customer service training, regular assessments of staff behavior, and a review system to track customer interactions more closely. The woman listened and offered suggestions based on her experiences, emphasizing practical approaches that could prevent similar incidents. She highlighted the importance of recognizing unconscious biases and fostering a culture of respect and equality. After the discussion, the woman spent some time walking through the bank, observing how staff interacted with customers. She noticed small differences compared to the day before. The atmosphere seemed calmer, and employees approached clients more attentively. It was a subtle change, but it indicated that the bank was beginning to respond to the incident seriously. She felt a sense of cautious optimism, knowing that real change would take time and consistent effort. Meanwhile, the teller spent the morning reflecting on his behavior. He reviewed the events in his mind repeatedly, analyzing his assumptions and how they had influenced his actions. He realized that his lack of awareness had caused significant harm, not just to the woman but also to the bank and his own career. The incident had become a mirror, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. Throughout the day, the woman received messages and calls from business associates who had heard about the incident. Many expressed support and admiration for the way she had handled the situation. They praised her calmness, her professionalism, and her ability to turn a negative encounter into a constructive experience. It reinforced her belief that how one responds to challenges can create lasting influence. The bank's leadership team held a meeting to discuss broader strategies for improving client relations. They reviewed the teller's actions as a case study, using it to identify gaps in training, supervision, and awareness. They acknowledged that unconscious biases could exist in anyone, and emphasized that it was their responsibility to ensure that such biases never affected the treatment of clients. The meeting highlighted the importance of creating a safe and respectful environment for everyone, setting a new standard for staff behavior. Later in the day, the woman met with a few senior bank officials privately. She shared insights about her expectations as a client and her experiences navigating financial institutions. She emphasized that respect and clear communication were fundamental to any successful client relationship. The officials listened attentively, taking notes and asking questions, clearly valuing her perspective and recognizing the importance of acting on it. As the day progressed, the bank began implementing immediate changes. Staff members were reminded of the importance of professional conduct, and any future incidents would be met with strict consequences. The teller was assigned a mentor and enrolled in an intensive training program designed to address both technical skills and interpersonal awareness. The management team recognized that correcting the culture required both individual accountability and systemic adjustments. The woman left the bank in the late afternoon, feeling a sense of accomplishment. While the events of the previous day had been unpleasant, she had used them as an opportunity to make a meaningful impact. Her composed response had not only highlighted the importance of dignity and professionalism, but had also set in motion changes that could benefit many future clients. Walking down the street, she reflected on the incident. She knew that prejudice could appear unexpectedly, even in professional settings, and that facing it required both courage and composure. She thought about the potential ripple effect of her actions, how they might inspire awareness and encourage others to uphold respect and fairness in their interactions. The experience had reinforced her belief in patience, persistence, and the power of calm, thoughtful action. At the same time, the teller faced the reality of his situation. He recognized that this incident would be a defining moment in his career, shaping how he approached clients and colleagues in the future. He understood that true growth required more than an apology. It required introspection, learning, and a commitment to change. As he began his training and mentorship, he hoped to rebuild trust and demonstrate that he had learned from his mistake. Back at the bank, staff continued to adjust to the new expectations. They observed the woman's visit as a reminder of the importance of their behavior and interactions. The incident sparked conversations about empathy, respect, and professionalism, creating an environment where everyone felt more accountable for their actions. Slowly, the culture began to shift, influenced by the combination of leadership guidance and the example set by the woman's composed handling of the situation. By the end of the day, the woman returned home satisfied with the progress made. She had witnessed the beginning of change both in the teller and the bank as a whole. She knew that real transformation would take time, but the initial steps were promising. Her experience had shown that confronting prejudice with dignity and clear communication could lead to meaningful outcomes, setting a standard for how similar situations might be handled in the future. That night, she reflected on the lessons learned. She recognized that courage was not always about confrontation or anger. It could be expressed through patience, clarity, and unwavering self-respect. She understood that her actions had created an example not only for the bank but also for the broader community, demonstrating that individuals have the power to influence positive change even in challenging circumstances. The teller, on the other hand, spent the evening in deep reflection. He reviewed the feedback from his mentors and training program, considering how he could prevent similar mistakes in the future. He realized that understanding and addressing personal biases was not a one-time effort, but a continuous process of growth and self-awareness. The incident had become a catalyst for change, pushing him to confront his shortcomings and strive for better judgment and professionalism. Through these events, both the woman and the bank learned valuable lessons. She demonstrated the power of composure, dignity, and clear communication, while the bank recognized the importance of accountability, training, and fostering a respectful environment. The teller's personal growth began to take shape, offering hope that even mistakes rooted in prejudice could be transformed into opportunities for learning and improvement. By the end of Part 3, the story highlighted the complex interplay of prejudice, accountability, and personal growth. The woman's resilience and calm leadership served as a guiding example, while the teller's reflection and the bank's proactive measures signaled the possibility of meaningful change. The incident had become more than an isolated event. It was now a catalyst for awareness, learning, and improvement, setting the stage for further developments in the unfolding story. Days passed since the incident, and the bank had begun to take more serious actions to address the situation. The woman had been in close communication with the management, ensuring that her complaint was not ignored and that the teller faced proper accountability. She understood that a single apology would not be enough. Real change required tangible steps, and she wanted to make sure the bank followed through. The teller had been suspended for a period of reflection and training. He was required to attend a sensitivity program, focusing on understanding unconscious bias, empathy, and professional conduct. Each session forced him to confront his assumptions and reflect on how his actions could harm others. He was unsettled, but he recognized that this was necessary if he wanted to continue working in a profession that required trust and respect. The days were long and challenging, as he faced the reality of how a moment of prejudice could have such far-reaching consequences. Meanwhile, the woman continued her normal routine, balancing work and personal life while keeping an eye on the bank's progress. She had a reputation to maintain and responsibilities to manage, but she never allowed the incident to distract her from her goals. Instead, she used it as an opportunity to influence positive change. She often spoke with the bank's leadership, offering suggestions to improve client interactions and prevent similar incidents in the future. The bank had begun implementing new policies. Staff were reminded daily about the importance of professionalism and respect, and training sessions became mandatory for everyone, not just the teller involved. They introduced a system to track customer interactions, ensuring accountability at every level. Posters and reminders emphasized that every client deserved fair treatment, regardless of race, appearance, or status. The woman's situation had become a catalyst for broader organizational improvement. One morning, the woman received a formal letter from the bank. It was a detailed apology, acknowledging the inappropriate behavior of the teller and outlining the steps the bank had taken. The letter explained the suspension, training, and review of policies, highlighting the institution's commitment to preventing future incidents. She read it carefully, appreciating the thoroughness, but she also knew that words alone were not enough. She wanted to see real change in behavior and culture, not just formal statements. She decided to meet with the teller in a controlled setting, accompanied by a senior manager. The purpose was not confrontation, but accountability and reflection. When he entered the room, he appeared visibly nervous and humbled. His eyes avoided hers at first, and he spoke in a low, uncertain tone. "I understand that my actions were completely wrong," he said. "I've been reviewing my behavior, and I see now how my assumptions and biases caused harm. I don't want to repeat this mistake." The woman listened carefully. She could see that he was beginning to grasp the impact of his behavior, though there was still a long way to go. "Acknowledgement is a start," she said calmly, "but true accountability comes from consistent action and respect. I hope you take what you have learned seriously and make sure that every client is treated fairly from now on." He nodded, understanding that this was not just a warning, but a life lesson. For the first time, he felt the weight of his responsibility and the importance of empathy in his work. The manager watching the interaction could see the beginning of personal growth, though he knew that trust would take time to rebuild. The incident also sparked discussions among the staff. Many employees began reflecting on their own behaviors, realizing that subtle prejudices could influence interactions in ways they hadn't noticed. Conversations about respect, empathy, and professionalism became more common. The bank leadership encouraged open dialogue, creating a safer environment for staff to explore these issues. The woman's composed handling of the situation had created a ripple effect, inspiring change beyond her direct interaction with the teller. Meanwhile, the woman shared her experience with a few close business associates. She did not dwell on the negative aspects but focused on the lessons learned and the importance of maintaining dignity under pressure. She emphasized how small actions like standing firm with calm confidence could lead to meaningful change. Her story spread, quietly influencing people in her community to recognize and confront prejudice when they encountered it. The teller continued his training, working with mentors to understand how to approach clients with fairness and respect. He learned to recognize the assumptions that had guided his previous behavior and practiced alternative ways of responding in professional situations. It was a humbling and sometimes uncomfortable process, but he began to see the value in self-awareness and reflection. The incident that had once felt like a personal failure was slowly transforming into an opportunity for growth. The bank also made public statements to reassure clients about their commitment to fair and respectful service. They communicated that incidents of this nature would not be tolerated, and that steps were being taken to strengthen staff training and policies. This transparency helped restore some confidence among clients and demonstrated that the institution was serious about accountability. As weeks passed, the woman continued to monitor the situation. She visited the branch occasionally, observing interactions and checking to see if changes were being implemented consistently. She was pleased to notice a shift in behavior, not just from the teller but across the staff. The incident had left a lasting impression, reminding everyone of the importance of treating all clients with dignity. At home, she reflected on how a single encounter had the potential to inspire change far beyond the immediate moment. She understood that her calm and firm response had influenced not only the teller, but also the culture of the bank and the attitudes of those around her. The experience reinforced her belief in patience, persistence, and integrity. The teller, though still facing the consequences of his actions, began to see the possibility of redemption. He recognized that regaining trust required consistent effort and genuine change. Each day in training reminded him of the importance of respect, empathy, and professionalism. Slowly, he started to internalize these lessons, understanding that real growth came from continuous reflection and learning. The woman's story also began to reach local media through professional networks, not sensationalized but as an example of resilience and dignity in the face of prejudice. Her approach, calm, composed, and focused on constructive change, became an example for others facing similar challenges. People admired her ability to turn a negative experience into a catalyst for awareness and improvement. In the bank, staff continued to integrate the lessons from the incident into their daily routines. Customer interactions were monitored more closely, and employees received regular feedback on professionalism and respect. The incident became a reference point for training and discussion, ensuring that future mistakes could be prevented. The teller's personal transformation also served as a powerful example of the potential for learning and growth. As the days turned into weeks, the woman felt a sense of accomplishment. She had faced an unexpected challenge, responded with dignity, and influenced positive change. She knew that the journey was ongoing, but the progress she observed reassured her that her actions had lasting impact. Her experience highlighted the importance of standing firm in one's principles and using difficult situations as opportunities to inspire awareness and improvement. The teller, now more self-aware and reflective, continued his journey of growth. He understood that accountability and empathy were not temporary requirements but lifelong practices. His perspective had shifted, and he was determined to demonstrate consistent respect and professionalism in every interaction. The experience had been humbling, but it also offered him a chance to become a better person and professional. In the larger community, the incident sparked quiet conversations about bias, respect, and accountability. People discussed the importance of treating everyone fairly, regardless of assumptions or appearance. The woman's composed response became a reference point, demonstrating how calm, thoughtful action could lead to meaningful change. By the end of this period, the situation had evolved from a personal conflict into an opportunity for education and improvement. The woman's strength and composure had influenced not just the teller but the entire culture of the bank. Staff members reflected on their behavior, clients noticed increased professionalism, and the teller embarked on a journey of self-awareness and growth. The incident had become more than a mistake. It had become a lesson in accountability, respect, and the power of dignity in the face of prejudice. Weeks had passed since the incident at the bank, and life had returned to a semblance of normal for the woman. Yet the events of that day continued to leave an impression on her mind. She had faced an unexpected challenge, navigated it with composure, and seen meaningful changes start to take place. It was a reminder that moments of difficulty could also be opportunities for growth and positive influence. The teller had returned to work after his suspension and training. There was a noticeable shift in his behavior. He approached clients with more attentiveness and patience, speaking carefully and ensuring that every interaction was professional and respectful. He still carried the weight of his past actions, but it seemed to guide him rather than define him. He was conscious of his responsibility to every client and the importance of not letting bias interfere with his work. The woman visited the branch occasionally, mostly to check on her transactions, but also to observe how the staff treated clients. Each visit revealed small improvements. Staff greeted clients warmly. Interactions were more courteous, and a culture of attentiveness had taken root. The bank's leadership had embraced the opportunity to learn from the incident, implementing ongoing training programs and encouraging open discussions about bias and professionalism. The teller's journey of reflection had become part of the bank's broader narrative, serving as a real-life example of growth and accountability. One afternoon, the woman was invited to meet with the senior management team of the bank. They wanted to hear her insights and suggestions for long-term improvements. She shared her experiences, emphasizing the importance of consistent respect, clear communication, and structured training programs. She highlighted how prejudice could sometimes be subtle, influencing decisions unconsciously, and she suggested methods to monitor and address such behavior effectively. Her approach was thoughtful, constructive, and focused on solutions rather than blame. The management team listened attentively, acknowledging her points and taking notes for future implementation. They explained how they planned to revise policies, enhance client service guidelines, and introduce regular audits of customer interactions. The woman could see the sincerity in their responses. They were not merely addressing the past incident, but were taking proactive steps to ensure the bank's culture would continue to improve. The teller, present during parts of these discussions, observed quietly. He felt a mix of humility and resolve. Listening to the woman's insights reinforced the importance of empathy and professionalism in every interaction. He realized that the incident had taught him lessons that extended far beyond the immediate conflict. He now understood that respect and fairness were essential not only for personal growth, but also for sustaining trust in professional environments. As days turned into weeks, the teller began demonstrating real change. He approached his work with greater awareness and attentiveness, recognizing the human stories behind every transaction. He apologized personally to some clients he had interacted with inappropriately before, expressing genuine remorse and a commitment to better conduct. While not all mistakes could be erased, his consistent efforts gradually began to rebuild trust. The woman continued her daily life with her business and personal responsibilities. She noticed that her influence extended subtly beyond the bank. As colleagues and associates discussed the incident and the lessons it carried, people began to reflect on how small biases could influence interactions and considered ways to improve their own behavior. Her calm, composed handling of the situation had become an example of dignity and effectiveness in challenging circumstances. The bank also introduced initiatives to foster awareness among its staff. Regular workshops, role-playing scenarios, and interactive discussions helped employees recognize their biases and practice respectful engagement. The management emphasized that these efforts were not temporary. They were a permanent part of the bank's commitment to professionalism and fairness. The teller's experience was often used as a case study, demonstrating the consequences of prejudice and the potential for personal growth. Meanwhile, the woman received recognition from her professional network for the way she had handled the incident. Colleagues praised her composure and her strategic approach to addressing a serious problem. They noted how she had transformed a negative encounter into an opportunity for constructive change, setting an example for handling similar situations in their own workplaces. She appreciated the acknowledgement but remained humble, viewing her actions as a responsibility rather than a personal victory. In her visits to the bank, she observed that the teller no longer exhibited the dismissive or impatient behavior that had caused the incident. He greeted clients warmly, handled questions with care, and treated every transaction with attention. His transformation was gradual but visible, a testament to both accountability and personal reflection. The woman felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her composed response and persistence had contributed to meaningful change. The community around the bank began to take notice as well. People who frequented the branch commented on the improved service and professionalism. The story of the incident, when discussed, focused on lessons learned rather than the conflict itself. It became an example of how individuals could influence positive change through dignity, patience, and clarity. The woman's actions inspired discussions about respect, fairness, and personal responsibility, extending the impact far beyond the bank's walls. At home, the woman reflected on the journey since the incident. She recognized that while prejudice and bias could appear unexpectedly, responding with composure, thoughtful action, and clear communication could transform a negative experience into an opportunity for learning and growth. She had witnessed how a single event could influence behavior, change organizational culture, and inspire others to reflect on their actions. It was a reminder of the power of human dignity and the impact of conscious, constructive responses. The teller, now more self-aware, continued to apply the lessons he had learned. He understood that accountability was ongoing, and that rebuilding trust required consistent effort. Each day offered new opportunities to practice empathy, patience, and professionalism. He had come to appreciate the profound impact that one's behavior could have on others, and he was committed to making amends through sustained, genuine improvement. In the bank, staff discussions about respect and professionalism became part of everyday practice. Employees began to recognize that every interaction mattered, and that assumptions based on appearance or background could have serious consequences. The teller's transformation and the woman's composed approach served as guiding examples for these lessons. Slowly but surely, the culture of the branch improved, emphasizing fairness, attentiveness, and accountability. The woman's experience also influenced her personal philosophy. She continued to approach challenges with calm determination, recognizing that difficult situations could serve as opportunities for growth and influence. She maintained her professional and personal commitments while remaining aware of the broader lessons the incident had provided. Her response had not only protected her dignity, but also contributed to meaningful change within the bank and her community. As time passed, the teller developed a deeper understanding of professional ethics and human interaction. The experience had reshaped his approach to work and personal reflection. He recognized that prejudice could be subtle but powerful, and that conscious effort was necessary to prevent it from affecting decisions and actions. His growth became an example for colleagues, demonstrating that even serious mistakes could lead to valuable learning and improvement. The bank continued to monitor its policies and client interactions, ensuring that the lessons from the incident remained relevant. Leadership emphasized that respect, fairness, and accountability were not optional, but core values. Staff training remained ongoing, and the teller's story was shared to highlight the importance of reflection, growth, and empathy. The woman felt a sense of quiet accomplishment. She had faced an unexpected challenge, addressed it with dignity, and witnessed meaningful change. Her composure and clear communication had not only resolved the immediate situation but also influenced the culture of the bank and inspired others in her community. She understood that the journey of change was ongoing, but she was confident that her actions had made a lasting difference. The teller, now more mindful and accountable, continued to demonstrate professionalism in every interaction. He remained aware of the lessons learned and committed to applying them consistently. His personal growth and the bank's cultural shift became intertwined, showing that accountability and reflection could lead to real transformation. By the end of this period, the incident had evolved from a personal conflict into a story of awareness, growth, and lasting impact. The woman's calm and composed handling, combined with her determination to ensure accountability, had created a ripple effect, influencing individual behavior, organizational culture, and community awareness. The teller's journey demonstrated that even mistakes rooted in prejudice could be transformed into opportunities for learning and improvement. Ultimately, the story highlighted the power of dignity, patience, and thoughtful action. It showed that challenges, when met with composure and clarity, could inspire,